Last summer was different. I'd been a fishing guide for over a decade, so I thought I knew the ocean well. I'd spent my days on the water, guiding tourists to the best spots. It was my job and my passion. But that summer, everything changed. It started one evening while I was cleaning my boat. I overheard a group of fishermen on the pier. They were telling stories about a phantom fish that lured people deep into the ocean. At first, I laughed it off. It felt like just another fishing tale. But the fear in their voices stuck with me. As the weeks wore on, strange things began happening. One day I was out alone on the water. It was eerily quiet. I was sorting through my gear when I noticed my bait had been arranged perfectly. It didn't make sense. I always left it scattered. My heartbeat quickened. I tried to brush it off, but something felt wrong. The tourists that day were silent. Normally they were excited, but they barely spoke. I tried to shake it off and went out deeper. That's when I saw the shadows. Something moved beneath the surface. A dark blur. I stopped my boat and stared. My gut twisted, but I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe the sunlight was playing tricks. Then there was the laughter. I'd be alone on the water and hear children giggling somewhere far off. There wasn't a soul around. It felt like the wind was taunting me. Cold sweat ran down my back. My clients began to disappear after strange encounters. I started to question everything. Was it the phantom fish? I thought about those stories. One little girl on a trip suddenly gasped and reached for something in the water. Her eyes were wide with wonder. I pulled her back immediately, but the look on her face stayed with me. The ocean felt different. Was I losing it, or was something real at work? I remember sitting on my boat one afternoon. I took a deep breath and looked out at the water. Then, it rippled around me. My heart dropped. I squinted into the distance, and there it was again. A shape moving just below the surface. Then I heard it. Josh. A whisper on the wind. I froze. My heart raced. I turned, but no one was there. Just me and the water that felt thick with something I couldn't name. I felt the air grow colder. Suddenly, the laughter returned, louder this time, echoing around me. I felt panic rise in my chest. I looked down into the water, and there it was. A face, pale and distorted, just beneath the waves. The laughter grew quieter, almost mocking. I stumbled back, my breath quickening. "What do you want?" I shouted. But the face vanished. The water stilled, inky darkness filling the space below me. I wanted to turn my motor on and get out of there, but my hands felt frozen. Just as I gathered myself, the voice whispered again, "Come play." My skin crawled, and I knew I had to leave. I started the engine and sped away, but I still don't know what it was. The phantom fish. Those stories felt hauntingly real now. I wonder if I'll ever understand what happened that summer. The next morning, I woke up drenched in sweat. I didn't sleep much after that encounter. The whispers and laughter stuck in my head. I decided to go out again, even though my gut was screaming at me to stay on land. I needed answers, but a part of me was terrified of what I might find. I grabbed my gear and headed to the pier. The sun hung low, casting an eerie glow over everything. Fishermen were busy preparing their boats for the day. I overheard snippets of conversation. The phantom fish was still the hot topic. They spoke of boats that went missing and deep-sea treasures that lured men to their doom. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of those words. I pushed off from the dock, my hands shaking on the wheel as I navigated the familiar waters. The ocean sparkled, but it felt different. The laughter from the day before echoed in my mind. It felt like a trap, waiting patiently for me to fall in. I stopped at one of my usual spots. As I set the bait, I noticed the water was unusually still around me. I took a breath and tried to concentrate, but the air felt charged with something I couldn't define. Suddenly, I heard it again, soft and inviting. "Come play." My heart raced. I turned in circles, scanning the horizon for signs of life, but there was only water, endless water. Then I noticed something glinting below the surface, catching the sunlight just right. Curiosity got the better of me, so I leaned over the edge of the boat to see what it was. A shiny object bobbed just below the surface, almost beckoning to me. I could feel the pull, like a magnetic force drawing me closer. That's when I saw it. A large, ornate lure, something I'd never seen before. It was beautiful, almost mesmerizing. Without thinking, I reached for it, a wave of euphoria washing over me. My fingers grazed the cold water, but before I could grasp it, something dark surged upward and crashed against my boat. I stumbled backward, nearly losing my balance. That's when the water erupted. A shadow shot past, powerful and swift. My breath caught in my throat as waves splashed over the sides. I scrambled to regain control, and then I heard it again. Laughter. But this time, it sounded angry. I bolted the motor, aiming back to shore. The shadows danced beneath me once more. Images flashed through my mind, stories of those who vanished, tales of greed and desire consuming them whole. I was on the verge of losing it too, just like the others. As I raced towards the safety of the dock, I realized I hadn't heard the whispers or laughter for a while. It was quiet, too quiet. A chill crept down my spine. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see something emerge from the depths, but the water remained calm, reflecting the sky like a mirror. I thought about the lure. I'd left it behind. Whatever it was, it wanted something from me. I felt a strange mix of fear and thrill surge within. When I reached shore, I took a deep breath, determined to find out more. I needed to learn about the lure, to know why it called to me. The stories felt more real than ever, and the sense of danger loomed heavy in the air. But I had no idea who I was going to have to confront next. I headed to the local hangout, sure that someone would have answers. That's when I noticed a figure watching me from the shadows. My heart raced. I wasn't alone after all. The figure stepped forward, and my heart pounded even harder. He was tall, wrapped in shadows, but there was something familiar about him. It was the local fisherman, Hank. He looked rough around the edges, with sunken cheeks and eyes that seemed to hold secrets. "Been looking for you," he said, his voice low. He gestured for me to follow him, and I hesitated. A gut feeling told me to turn around and run. But my curiosity got the better of me. I nodded and trailed behind him to a secluded corner of the hangout. Hank leaned against the wall, glancing around nervously. "You were out on the water earlier, weren't you?" His tone was serious, almost grim. I nodded again, trying to play it cool. "Yeah, just doing some fishing." His expression darkened. "Did you see it? The lure?" I felt a jolt. I wasn't sure what all the locals knew, but it seemed they were aware of more than what they let on. "You mean the one that everyone's talking about?" "Not just that." He looked me in the eye, his gaze piercing. "The whispers, the shadows beneath the surface. It's dangerous. You don't know what you're messing with." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shaky. "I just wanted to catch some fish." "You're not fishing," he said, his words laced with urgency. "You're calling something. That lure isn't just pretty. It holds a power that can't be understood. You have no idea who or what it wants." Fear ignited in my chest. "What do you mean?" It felt inviting. Hank sighed heavily, as if the weight of his own experiences hung around his neck. "It feels that way for a reason. It lures you in, gets into your head. People have gone missing out there. Not just boats, but folks too. Don't be a fool. Stick to the shore." His warning hung in the air between us. I needed answers, but I didn't want to end up like the others. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Find out who created that lure. There's always a story behind it." His eyes were intense as he spoke. "And whoever has it, they're not safe." I felt a chill run down my spine. Who would have made such a dangerous thing? Why was it calling to me? Just then, the chatter from inside the hangout grew louder, breaking the tension. Hank leaned closer to me, his voice dropping to a hush. "If you're going back out there, you better be careful. And if you see a figure watching you from the water, don't engage. Just turn and leave." His warning echoed in my mind as I stepped away from him. I felt like I was walking on the edge of a knife, balancing between curiosity and danger. I had so many questions, but I was terrified of the answers. As I walked away, the laughter returned, echoing in my ears, but this time it felt like a taunt. I glanced back at Hank, but he was already fading into the shadows. I didn't know it then, but I was on the verge of uncovering a truth that would change everything. I pulled out my phone and started searching for information on fishing lures, ancient tales, anything that might give me a clue. But the laughter increased, wrapping around me like a shroud, making it hard to concentrate. I felt eyes on me. Turning slowly, I looked around, but no one was there. I shook off the feeling, telling myself it was just paranoia. But deep down, I knew I was being watched, and it wasn't going to stop until I found out the truth. The next day, I couldn't shake Hank's warning from my mind. I had a growing urge to investigate that lure, despite every instinct telling me to back off. I grabbed my gear early, determined to figure out its history. It felt like the only way to find peace now, even if it meant diving into the unknown. As I made my way to the dock, I overheard two fishermen talking animatedly. Their voices were low but urgent. "She was out there for hours before they found the boat," one said. "Said she was just fishing, but they found the lure in the water." I paused, straining to catch more of their conversation. The other man's voice rose, filled with disbelief. "They say it calls to you. The old-timers warned us. It's the lure that takes them." My heart raced. I approached them, but fear held me back. What could I ask? I had no proof of anything, just a feeling that something was very wrong. Instead, I decided to head out to sea, ready to confront whatever was waiting for me. Once I was out on the water, I felt an eerie stillness settle around me. The waves were gentle against the bottom of the boat, but the quiet felt heavy. I cast my line, watching the lure dance in the water. The moment it broke the surface, I felt a sudden chill skitter down my spine. Then, I saw it. A dark shadow flitted beneath my boat. I tried to brush it off as just a fish, but the image of a figure holding something shiny surged in my mind. My hands trembled as I reeled back in the line and glanced over the side. Nothing was there, but the sensation of being watched clawed at me. Suddenly, I remembered Hank's warning. As I turned to check the horizon, I caught a glimpse of something emerging. Something dark, moving quickly just below the surface. It took all my strength to hold my breath and not scream. The water rippled unnaturally, and I felt the pull of the lure stronger than before. I fought the temptation to recast it. The laughter from last night echoed in my ears, the taunts, the whispers. Then, the shadow came closer, surfacing only a few feet away. I squinted, and for a moment, the sun caught the glimmer of what looked like a pair of eyes, reflecting back at me from the depths. Panic surged within me. I fumbled to start the engine and turned the boat toward the shore, willing it to go faster, but it felt like I was moving in slow motion. Just then, a figure loomed, standing at the edge of the boat. I squinted. Was it a person? The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I could barely breathe. Everything inside me screamed to get away, but the figure reached toward me, pointing at my lure. "What do you want?" I shouted over the engine noise. My heart hammered in my chest, and with each passing second, the weight of uncertainty pressed down harder. The figure, a woman, eyes wide and hollow, opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Frantically, I twisted the throttle, and in that moment, everything went dark. I jolted awake, the engine's hum fading into the background. I was back on the dock, no sign of the woman or the figure from the water, but I felt a cold weight in my hands. A piece of silver metal glimmered in my palm. It was part of a lure, but this one was different, old and engraved. I had no idea how it ended up with me, but I knew one thing. I'd awakened something, and it wanted more than just my attention. I spent the night tossing and turning, the engraved lure lying next to me on the nightstand. It was as if it pulsed with energy, begging me to confront what I had stumbled into. Morning finally broke, and sunlight flooded my room, but it did little to ease my mind. When I arrived back at the dock, the fishermen were already there preparing their boats. I approached cautiously, feeling the tension in the air. I needed answers, but I had to tread carefully. I spotted the two men from yesterday. They were still talking, but this time, their expressions were grave. Something else happened last night. one of them said, his voice low. Another boat went missing. Just like Margaret's, the other replied, shaking his head. That lure, it's hungry. My stomach dropped. I stepped closer, heart racing. What happened to Margaret? I asked, my voice wavering. They glanced at each other, then at me. She was our friend, out there fishing. We figured she just got lost, one man replied. But they found her boat, empty. They say she was never alone. Never alone, I pressed, feeling the gravity of the situation bearing down on me. What do you mean? Those that go out with that lure, they're drawn to it, he explained. Some return, most don't. The weight of their words sank in. I clenched the old lure in my pocket. This was getting too deep, but a part of me felt almost compelled to keep digging. What do you know about it? The legends say it belonged to a fisherman who went mad, the second man said, eyes darting around. He believed it had powers. He wasn't the first to hear its whispers. What are the whispers? I asked, leaning in closer. Those who hear them never come back to tell the tale, he whispered, his voice dropping to a near hush. Determined not to show fear, I started to step away, but just then, I heard a splashing sound behind me. I turned quickly and saw a dark figure emerging from the water. My breath caught as I recognized the lurking shape. It was the same shadow I had seen before, only this time it seemed larger, more menacing. The fisherman shared a look of dread. We should go, one of them urged, already turning his boat around. But it was too late. The figure shot through the water, wild and chaotic. Suddenly, the lure in my pocket felt hot against my skin. The energy surged, a magnetic pull compelling me toward the water. I couldn't help myself. My legs began to move toward the edge. No! I yelled at myself, fighting against the lure's hold. I tried to back away, but it felt as if the lure was sending tendrils into my mind, whispering promises of secrets and power. I stumbled and fell back onto the dock, gasping as the darkness in the water vanished. I looked up. The fishermen were now watching me, their expressions a mix of fear and pity. They clearly knew something I didn't, and I was out of my depth. Then between the rippling water and the dock, a hand emerged, pale and skeletal. My heart stopped. This was real. It was a reminder that the curse of the lure wasn't just folklore, it was hunting for victims. I scrambled back, but in the chaos, the lure slipped from my grip and fell into the water. The hand sank back suddenly, and with it, the weight of the moment crashed down on me. I realized then that whatever was tied to that lure was not finished with me. I had to figure out how to confront this darkness before it pulled me under completely. As I sat on the dock, my head spun with confusion and dread. The fishermen were packing their gear, exchanging worried glances, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to act. The lure was gone, but the connection remained. I could still hear its whispers in my mind, a siren's call luring me back toward the water. "Are you all right?" one of the fishermen asked, his brow furrowed with concern. I nodded but knew I was far from fine. "We've got to warn everyone about that lure. It's more dangerous than you know," he said. "What do you mean?" "Every boat that goes out seems to face it," I replied, feeling desperate for clarity. He hesitated before speaking. "I shouldn't say too much, but if you're looking for answers, you need to talk to Old Man Harris. He knows more about the history of that lure than anyone. Just be careful. He's seen things." "I will," I said, hoping it would ease my fear. I headed away from the dock, determined to find him. Old Man Harris lived at the edge of town, surrounded by the tall pines that swayed in the wind like a warning. When I arrived at his ramshackle cabin, the door creaked open before I could knock. He stood there, thin and gaunt, his face etched with a lifetime of knowledge, or madness. His eyes locked onto mine, a spark of recognition flickering. "You've been touched by it, haven't you?" he said, his voice gravelly. "The lure." I felt my blood turn cold. "What do you know?" I asked, trying to sound brave. "More than I wish I did," he sighed, inviting me in with a shaky hand. "Sit. It's not safe to talk outside." Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of brine. Old maps adorned the walls, several marked with cryptic symbols. That lure draws strength from fear, he continued, pacing nervously. It's a beacon for something dark. It whispers to those who are vulnerable, turning them into vessels. Fishermen, friends, even family. Those who succumb vanish, never to return. I shook my head, disbelief creeping in. It can't be real. He leaned closer, intensity in his gaze. You think Margaret just disappeared? No. She became part of it. And it wants you next. His words twisted my heart. But why me? I only touched it. Touching it is enough, he replied softly. The moment you did, it marked you. Now you need to unmark yourself before it's too late. How can I do that? I asked desperately. Harris took a deep breath. There's a way. You need to face the waters under the moonlight tonight. Only then can the connection be severed. Bring something of yours. It'll serve as an offering to the spirit bound to the lure. As he spoke, a cold chill descended. But you won't be alone, he added, his tone lowering. The darkness that comes with it is unpredictable. You might not come back. I felt the urge to flee, but deep down, I knew I was tied to this. I had to confront it. I'll do it, I declared, though my hands trembled at my sides. Then, without warning, the lights flickered and the ground beneath us seemed to rumble. That's when I saw it, shadowy figures creeping in on the edges of my vision, hovering just beyond the cabin. I realized I wasn't just feeling the lure's energy anymore, it was all around me, growing restless. Get out, Harris shouted, but I was already moving. I stumbled out of the cabin, heart racing, desperate to escape the encroaching darkness. I would need to return tonight, but first, I had to prepare. As I reached the clearing, I swore I heard whispers following me, beckoning me to come closer to the water once more. But there was no turning back now. I was already in its grasp. The day dragged on, but the approaching night loomed over me like a storm cloud. I couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. As I walked through town, the usual sights felt off, as if the shadows were growing longer, creeping closer as I passed. People went about their business, but their laughter sounded hollow, like echoes of happiness just out of reach. I went home, but found no comfort there. I rummaged through my belongings, looking for something meaningful to take with me. Nothing seemed right. I needed to find something that anchored me to who I was before the lure's whispers invaded my thoughts. But I found only distractions. Childhood toys, dusty books, and old photos. Each one brought memories bubbling to the surface, but none fit the desperate need I felt. Finally, I stumbled upon my grandmother's locket tucked away in a box. It was a small silver piece worn with time, but it had always brought me comfort. I knew then that this was the offering I needed. It represented my past and the love I had for those who were gone, a reminder of warmth amid this chilling darkness. With the locket in hand, I turned my attention to the clock. Each tick felt like a countdown. I had to prepare myself for whatever awaited me by the water. The sun slipped slowly behind the horizon, bathing everything in an uneasy glow. It was time to face the unknown. At the dock, the moon began to rise, casting an eerie silver light across the waves. The water shimmered, inviting yet foreboding. I stepped closer, the urge to dive into its depths pulling at me. My heart pounded as I remembered Harris's warning. I wasn't here to succumb. I was here to sever the connection. Suddenly, a chill raced through the air, and I heard them. Voices carried on the wind, rising like a chorus. They beckoned sweetly at first, but quickly morphed into a cacophony of sorrow and pain. I shivered, forcing myself to stay focused. Something was rising beneath the water, something dark and twisted. Just as I prepared to approach the edge, I noticed movement in the distance. A figure emerged from the shadows on the opposite end of the dock. It was hard to make out the details, but the silhouette seemed familiar. My breath caught. Could it be? I squinted against the moonlight, and then I saw it. The figure was dressed just like Margaret used to be, her hair floating around her as though submerged. Panic surged through me. "Margaret!" I called out, my voice trembling. But she didn't respond. Instead, she continued to drift closer, a glassy, vacant look in her eyes. That's when everything shifted. The waters churned violently, and I felt the pull of the dark energy surging toward me. My locket began to burn in my pocket, as if fighting against the lure's grasp. I staggered back, terrified. The whispers grew louder, rising in intensity to drown out my thoughts. Desperation overtook me. I clutched the locket tightly. "I won't go with you," I yelled. Yet deep down, I could feel the pull of something sinister, urging me to let go. Then everything went dark. The moonlight flickered, and I found myself standing face to face with Margaret. An icy grip held my heart as I searched her eyes for the warmth I once knew. But all I saw was an emptiness that chilled me to the bone. What was waiting beneath that calm exterior? And would the locket be enough to protect me from what was about to happen next? I stood there, frozen. Margaret's eyes stared back at me like empty windows, devoid of any life. My heart raced as the familiar warmth I once felt for her shattered into a million pieces. "Margaret, it's me," I stammered, hoping to make some kind of connection, but her gaze did not shift. Around us, the swirling darkness pulsed, closing in. I could sense the malevolence creeping deeper, intertwining with the air, wrapping around my throat. The locket in my hand felt hotter than ever, a warning and a promise all at once. I had no idea what to do. "Margaret!" I yelled again, desperation clawing at my throat. "Please, come back to me." But she didn't move. Instead, her lips curled slightly, a smile that felt more like a sneer. "Why are you fighting it?" she asked, her voice a twisted echo, soft yet menacing. I recoiled. It was not the voice I remembered. "You don't have to be afraid. We can be together." The words sliced through the air with a sharpness that made my chest tighten. My instincts screamed for me to run, but my feet remained glued to the dock. The voices returned, more pronounced now, each syllable dripping with seduction. "Join us. Embrace the depth." As if summoned by her words, the water began to boil beneath us, sending waves crashing against the wooden planks. I stumbled backward, feeling the overwhelming pull of the abyss below. I gripped the locket tighter, its heat scorched my palm, reminding me of the life I wanted to hold on to. "Margaret, you're not yourself," I protested, fighting against the tide of sorrow flooding my mind. "This isn't you." Her expression flickered for a moment, the glimmer of recognition flashing in her gaze. I seized the opportunity. "Remember the summer at the lake? We laughed all day. You taught me how to catch fish with my bare hands." For the briefest second, her smile wavered. That was a long time ago. "Exactly," I pressed on, trying to keep her in that moment. "You loved the sunlight, the warmth. This darkness isn't who you are. Come back." A flash of uncertainty crossed her face, and the eerie moonlight caught a hint of the person I once adored. But then, the darkness behind her surged forward, consuming her expression again. "Let go," she whispered, the words laced with a vicious sweetness. I felt tears sting my eyes as the darkness wrapped around me, threatening to pull me under. In one last desperate act, I tore the locket from my neck and held it out. "This is our love, Margaret. Don't let them take you." The locket glimmered, illuminating her face with a soft glow. For a moment, I thought I saw her, my Margaret, breaking through. But then she hesitated, caught between two worlds, and then, just like that, everything shifted. The dock trembled beneath me as the water exploded upward, and I was thrown back. The locket slipped from my fingers, tumbling into the water with a faint splash. Panic surged through me as I stretched out my hand. No, but it vanished below the surface, swallowed by the darkness. Margaret's expression remained vacant, her eyes now even more distant than before. The whispers intensified, a chorus of unfulfilled promises and despair. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing against the growing noise. I had lost the very thing that could save her. And the battle wasn't over. Then I heard it, a crackling sound from behind me. I turned in time to see a figure emerging from the shadows. My heart sank as I recognized the outline, familiar, yet terrifying. It was Harris, standing there with a knowing look in his eyes. "It's worse than I thought," he said, his voice low and serious. "We need to go. Now." A new sense of urgency gripped me as I glanced back at Margaret, still trapped between worlds. What had I done? Would it be too late to save her? And what was Harris hiding? I took a step toward Harris, my breath coming fast. "What do you mean it's worse? What's going on?" I demanded, my eyes darting back to Margaret. She still stood there, lost, surrounded by the dark water. I couldn't leave her, not like this. "They've got her." Harris shook his head slowly, his eyes darkened with understanding. "The locket was a tether. Without it, she's lost. We can't stay here." I felt my stomach drop. "But I can't just leave her. We have to do something." Harris stepped closer, urgency pulsing in his voice. "You think I want to run? I've seen what happens when we linger. We don't have time for this. We need to regroup." Behind him, the shadows twisted as if alive. The whispers grew louder, forming a chilling symphony that cut through my panic. I felt as if the very dock was alive, luring me back into the water's embrace. "Regroup?" I shot back. "What are you talking about? You know what we're dealing with. We can't abandon her. Haven't you been listening? If we don't go now, we could end up like her." Harris motioned to the boiling waters. "Those whispers are just the start. They want you too." I hesitated, torn between the need to save Margaret and the reality of the danger closing in. "Where do we go?" "There's an old boathouse up the shore. It might offer some protection," he said, glancing nervously behind him. "But we need to hurry." The air thickened with tension, and I caught a glimpse of movement in the water, shadows shifting and darting just beneath the surface. I had to make a choice. I could feel the icy breath of the darkness wrapping around my spine, urging me to stay and fight, yet every instinct told me to run. "Fine," I said, gritting my teeth. "But I'm not leaving her here. Not like this." Harris nodded, understanding quickly tinged with a flicker of relief. We began to back away from the dock, my eyes never leaving Margaret. It felt wrong to leave her, but I knew the cruel truth. I wasn't strong enough to save her alone. As we moved toward the shore, the water surged violently, dark tendrils reaching up. I glanced back one last time. "Margaret!" I shouted, but she remained frozen, an echo of the woman I loved trapped in the depths. My heart surged with regret as I turned away. We raced along the gravel path, the shadows at my back whispering promises I knew were false. "That thing in the water," I whispered to Harris as we reached the boathouse. "What is it?" He looked grim. "An ancient creature. It feeds on despair. The more you fight, the stronger it becomes." I shook my head in disbelief. "Does it really have her? Can we get her back?" Harris paused, looking at me with a mix of pity and determination. "We might be able to. But first we need to arm ourselves. There are things we can do." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from the dock. I froze, fear gripping me. "What was that?" Harris turned pale. "They know we're here. We have to move now." I watched him run inside the boathouse, adrenaline pounding through me. But as I took a step forward, I felt that familiar pull of darkness beckoning. It was still there, still waiting. And I was about to discover just how much danger I had invited into my life. That's when I saw it. The water, once turbulent, had gone eerily still. A shadow surged beneath the surface, closer to the shore. My stomach dropped. Something was coming for me. And this time it wasn't just Margaret. I bolted into the boathouse after Harris, fear igniting every muscle in my body. The room was dimly lit, filled with the scent of salt and decay. Old fishing gear and tackle boxes were strewn across the floor, and the walls bore scratches as if something had tried to claw its way back in. My heartbeat thudded loudly in my ears. "Hurry!" Harris urged, rifling through a weathered toolbox. "We need to find something that can help us. Anything to protect ourselves." I scanned the room, desperate for a weapon, but my mind kept drifting back to Margaret. I could still see her pale face, eyes empty of their spirit. Would it really be too late to save her? With each passing moment, I felt the weight of that darkness creeping closer. "Harris, how do I fight it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How do I bring her back? His hands trembled as he pulled out an old harpoon gun. This may help, but it's not a guarantee. The lure and the creature are linked. You need to sever that connection. What if it does something to me? I said, fear lacing my words. What if I'm dragging it back in? He locked eyes with me, urgency radiating from his expression. If you're going to do this, you need to remember who you are. Tap into that strength and don't listen to the whispers. The moans of the creatures came back, echoing in the back of my mind, against the walls of the boathouse. With every moment I spent dawdling, I felt the echoes drown me in despair. I snatched the harpoon gun from him, the weight feeling heavy in my hands. Let's go, I said, determination hardening my voice. We stepped outside, and the night air bit into my skin. The moon shone brightly above, illuminating the lake, but the water was still and deceptive. The cliff at the edge of the dock seemed to loom down below, waiting for my next move. There! Harris pointed. A figure was surfacing across the water, the shadow from before. Hurry! I peered out, my heart racing. The ghostly figure of Margaret rose slowly, her hollow eyes searching the shoreline. I felt the pull of the darkness, that haunting whisper rising again, beckoning me closer. Remember who she was, Harris urged, clenching my shoulder. The reflection isn't her. I took a deep breath, clearing my thoughts as terror surged through me. I had to focus. I raised the harpoon gun, fingers trembling over the trigger. Margaret! I shouted over the whispers, urging me to come closer. I'm here! I won't let you go! She didn't respond. Her gaze remained fixed and empty, but the shadows danced around her like a shroud. Join us, she murmured, voice a chilling echo. My heart shattered at the sound, but I couldn't focus on that. I had to keep her essence alive in my mind. Margaret, remember our summers by the lake? Remember how we'd stay up late just talking and dreaming? I called out desperately. That's who you really are. For a moment, the faintest flicker of recognition crossed her face. I could see it, the ghost of her spirit fighting through. Harris's eyes widened in realization. Now, fire! I pressed down on the trigger, sending a bolt slicing through the air. The harpoon pierced the water. For a split second, everything went silent. Then, a loud roar erupted from below, sending ripples spanning out, dark tendrils breaking the surface. The shadowed figure surged, revealing itself as the creature, a monstrous behemoth, ancient and massive. Its eyes burned like coals, fixating on me with the intensity of an eternal hunger. I froze for an agonizing second, heart pounding in my chest. Keep firing! Harris yelled. I snapped back into action as I loaded the gun again, focusing on the creature. The connection I felt with Margaret surged, and I aimed for the disturbance rippling in the water, but the whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts and pulling me into their grasp. Let go, Margaret's voice echoed again, disembodied, yet enchanting. Come play. No! I screamed, fighting against the urge to succumb. I steadied my aim once more and fired again, this time striking true. The harpoon embedded into the creature, causing it to writhe in pain, the surface of the water bubbling angrily. For the first time I saw a glimpse of clarity in Margaret's expression, a flutter of hope, almost human. Fight it, I yelled, desperation shaping my words. You're stronger than this. Remember who you are. The creature screeched again, and I pulled the gun back, frantically reloading. Again! Harris shouted, urging me on. I fired once more. The haunting darkness shrieked as the harpoon found its mark again, rage exploding in the water. The energy shifted, the air heavy with desperation as shadows began to retreat, linked to Margaret's face. In that moment, I saw her truly, a flicker of her essence shining through the darkness. Josh, she whispered, and I could almost feel her reaching out. My heart shattered all over again, and I knew I couldn't give in. Margaret, take my hand, I yelled, reaching into the pool of shadows gathering around her. Just believe, and I'll bring you back. The water roared with fury, thrashing as I held steady. The beast lashed out, furious with its loss of control, but I wouldn't back down. I felt the shadows fighting back, but I forced them aside, fueled by the love memories carved in my heart. And suddenly, something shifted. The shadows curled back, relinquishing their hold. The whispers faded into the night as I felt the warmth of her essence begin to return. "Josh!" Margaret cried, now pushing forward through the water, a glimmer of light breaking through the darkness surrounding her. With one last effort, I took aim, focusing on the creature behind her, determined to sever the bond it had with her once and for all. I fired and hit true, sending a shockwave cascading through the lake. Time froze as I watched the moment unfold. The darkness recoiling in a storm of fury, a sudden flash of light brightening everything around me. And then it happened. Margaret broke free from its grasp, her arm outstretched toward me, the locket shimmering at last in the moonlight as it was dislodged from the depths. "Grab it!" Harris shouted. I lunged forward, reaching for her with everything I had left in me. My fingers grasped the locket just as it surfaced. It felt alive in my hands, warmth pulsing through it as I caught hold of her. The shadows faded into oblivion, the monstrous shriek echoing in retreat. Through it all, the locket resonated deeply, a bridge built between us, tethering us together. Before I realized it, I felt her presence enveloping me into a warm embrace. We were whole again, the bond reinvigorated. But the shadows still loomed at the edges of our vision, whispering promises. "Now let's get out of here," I said, breathing heavily as I took her hand. Together we turned back toward the shore, wary but unbroken. As we reached the safety of the land, I heard the distant voice behind us, fading away, but holding tight to that same hollow promise. I had fought a great battle and we had survived, yet the echoes of the ocean left their mark. But even as we stepped free from its depths, the haunting nature of our encounter clung like mist. I pushed down the feeling of unease. The waters remained a mystery, and while we had escaped for now, I couldn't shake the feeling that something would always linger. Something waiting in the shadows of the ocean's depths, just beyond our grasp. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if they still hear the whispers, if that shadow still waits in the depths for someone to return. But mostly, I try not to think about it.